Benedict.
Hello there, very good evening. Welcome to another edition of Face to Face. Amidst all the problems that Sri Lanka is facing, especially the economic crisis, many people are feeling the brunt of how hard it is to live right now. But imagine if poverty was part of your everyday life, and while you are among the poorest of the poor, you had to face the economic crisis. Now, at least on the face of it, this appears to be the case for Sri Lanka's plantation sector employees who have been getting a certain wage, a set wage under a collective agreement. There is always issues over the wages of plantation sector employees. The government is involved, the private planters are involved, and Sri Lanka's future in the tea industry hangs in the balance while all of this takes place. Now, to discuss these matters and much more, today we've got with us Mr. Anselm Perera. He is the former chairman of the Colombo Tea Traders Association. A very good evening, Mr. Perera, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, for starters, Mr. Perera, this issue on plantation sector employees and their salaries have been there from time immemorial. So, is it really true that plantation sector employees don't get a fair wage? Because, like I said at the beginning, at least from the face of it, that appears to be true. Their living standards are much, much lower than the rest of the country. Their houses are not their own. The standards in those houses are much, much worse than the rest of the country. Sanitation is almost non-existent in those areas. So it appears that they are not being paid a living wage to live a decent life.
I don't think this is right, because their houses are not their own, but there are areas where the houses have been given to them, new houses have been built, and they are in their own houses. As regards sanitation, I must say, whatever you do and give proper toilets, it is up to the user to use it properly and keep it sanitized. If you look at our public toilets today, is sanitation proper? No. Why? Because we do not have proper toilet practices. We don't want to leave it the way we want to see it when we walk in, when we leave. We mess it up and go.
So do you think that the issue of plantation sector employees is that simple?
No. They are certainly not that poor. They get a salary which is in line with what they do. And above that, there is an incentive scheme. This is what I know. I'm not a plantation expert. I'm from the export trade. So I could only talk about what the impact is from this wage increase on the export side. Right? But if they want to, there are some who earn the incentive wage. And they, I'm told, are getting more than between 50 to 80,000 rupees a month if they work on that. But the problem is, when they do that, they're threatened by certain unions not to work on the incentive scheme and get that salary, because they want everyone to get the same wage whether they work or not. This is what is wrong. If the output is right, they get their proper wages. Nowhere in this world, I mean in our country, now if you take workers of the private trade here in the export sector, they get a higher wage, but we get much more work out of them. They give their maximum in the 8 hours that they work. You must find out whether these people really work 8 hours. They do not work 8 hours. That's what I am told. They work only 4 to 5 hours a day. And how can you then pay for 8 hours? And the next thing is, when the wages are increased by 70% at once, which industry can sustain it?
But when the economic crisis hit, were their wages increased?
Of course, everybody had wage increases, including them. They had, I'm told that they had certain allowances given. And don't forget, the plantation worker has so many other benefits which none of us have. They get a free house. They get free water. I don't know about electricity, whether they get free electricity now. In the past, they did that also. They get a plot to do their vegetables. They get all that, and they get the schooling free. Of course, in the government sector, schooling is free, but they have their own schools in the area. Then their health care is looked after. There is a creche for them to leave their children. Their maternity care is looked after. Where in the world do you get that kind of thing in an industry?
So are you saying the life of a plantation sector employee is really a steal?
No, it's
a good deal.
It's a very good deal, I'm sure. If they really work the right way. So I am actually interested in talking about what this wage increase would do to impact the face of the export, because we, the exporters, are the face of the industry to the rest of the world. We export our finished products to the rest of the world, and when we do, we maintain certain standards. Ceylon tea has a certain standard. That standard has to be maintained. Ceylon tea gets a higher price than all the rest of the teas in the world, except for niche teas, of course. We get around $2 extra as against world markets. Kenya, India, everybody gets less. We are getting a higher price. And some of our blenders tell the people who export bulk that they will not be able to continue to give this higher price. So where do you draw the line? Then you need to increase the quality. Now, when
but then the government now says that because plantation sectors, the estates were given to the private sector, the government says that, well, if you can't do it, we'll do it. Do you think that's possible?
Look at it this way. In 1974, the then socialist thinking government nationalized the entire plantation industry, right? Thereby trying to do it themselves. And they established JDB and SLSPC. Eventually, in 20 years, they ran the estates down to the ground. They could not manage. They were in financial crisis. They handed it over to companies known as the regional plantation companies. There's 21 of them now running these estates. And all are stock market quoted companies, and they are running their business well. There may be times that they make profit, there may be times that they make losses, there may be times that they make huge losses, but they have not gone to the government asking for funds. Whereas there are two sets of estates that are still there, JDB and SLPC. All those are running at a loss. They are going to the treasury to get money. Even to pay these wages, higher wages, this time they had gone to the treasury. What's the point? The country is getting into further debt. No RPC has ever asked for grants to pay salaries. So when you ask somebody to increase the salaries by 70%, it's a little unreasonable, because we need to relate it to productivity. And if you say productivity should be the problem of the managers to improve production, no. The moment they work on an incentive scheme, they are blocked by the unions, because unions lose clout if these people get more money. They can always earn more money. This is what I am told. Even if we have incentive schemes in our workplaces, our workers work. Nobody is going to object to them. No unions come to object, because we don't tolerate that. But here they are forced by the unions to stop that. And because of that, they can't earn on the incentive wage. There were times that when they did it, I am told that they earn between 70 to 80,000 rupees a month.
But that's not what the unions say. The unions say that the planters or the plantation companies are the devils. They are the ones who are not paying them properly. And you say that the unions are the devils, and they are not the ones allowing these people to work and earn as much as they can. So who do we believe?
Unions block them when they try to work. Plantation companies have given them everything that they need. It is up to them to utilize.
Do you think your opinion is one-sided?
No, certainly not. I am actually here to talk about the impact that this would have on the export industry. Now, you take the first coffin that they brought forward was the privatization, the nationalization of the tea industry, or nationalization of the entire plantation industry. They brought the whole industry down in 20 years. Right? Then they decided to re-privatize, and the RPCs came in and helped them. And they have taken it, and ever since then, they have run without a problem. And of course, in between, there were interferences. Then the second biggest problem was when the only available weedicide that was necessary to control weeds in the plantations, where you cannot do commercial agriculture by manually weeding. We don't have the labor force. When nationalization took place, we had 500,000 laborers. By the time they denationalized, it had dropped down to, now it's dropped down to about 150,000 or less, I'm told. So in the estate sector, when we had 500,000, we are managing with such low numbers of labor. So we need to, we decide, and this is, glyphosate was the world accepted weedicide. Over a discussion with a Buddhist priest, the then head of state banned the use. I was chairman of the CDTA at that time, and we tried so hard to get it, and it took us more than 2 years to get it back. By then, the weeds had grown, leopards were roaming the hill country. It was such a problem, right? And production came down. Then the next biggest shot, after we got it back, it takes a while to get the weeds out. The second biggest shot was when the commercial application of
Fertilizer.
Chemical fertilizer was banned. It is like asking to grow a child up without feeding him. Will the child grow? No. Similarly, they just banned this on us and expected the crop to continue. Crop figures came down. Our 1.3 billion income, which was supposed to go up to $1.5 billion from exports, came down drastically. Our volumes came down. Then they realized and opened their eyes that it was late. Now, to undo what is done in a short period of time takes a much longer period to redo, because the plants are suffering, they are not properly looked after. So, it takes a while for this to come back. We are still not back with our same crop, because fertilizer is still being applied, and it takes a while. So, then when you do things like that, cost of production goes up by 200 rupees, I am told, if you give this wage per kilo. Then the world market price has to go up that amount, not by 200, it will have to go up by much more to sustain this. If that doesn't happen, this is supposed to impact the industry by about 40 billion rupees per year. This is not stopping at the RPCs, this is getting down to the local down south plantations, because there are so many smallholders, about 500,000 smallholders producing 70% of this country's production, whereas RPCs produce in the high growns only about 30% of production. If the 70% is also affected by this 30% issue, where are we going? How will those people survive? They will not
you
get
said,
a
you said when the price of when the salaries are increased, it will increase the local prices by about 200 rupees.
Yeah, cost.
The cost.
Local cost.
The local cost. So how does that cost compound when it goes to the world market? You said the world market prices will be higher. How does that happen?
No, we can't increase the prices. World market prices will have to be higher for us to recover that. That means the auction price will have to move up by at least $1 for us to get this. We are already getting $2 extra.
If the cost is only going up by 200 rupees, why do you have to increase the auction price by $1, which is about
dollar is 300 rupees.
Yeah,
300 rupees. So
where does that extra 100 go?
No, that 100% will not come here, because we have to pay for the leaf. All those issues are there. 200, even to go up to 200 is about $70 cents, right? So who will give you that amount of price when we are already on a higher price? We are very lucky. Sri Lanka has always got at the auction a higher price than the rest of the world. And that is because people expect our quality to be better. Now, when we do this, the plantations will have to compromise. How will they compromise? By reducing the input cost. Number one, they'll have to reduce fertilizer. Number two, they'll have to stop weeding. Number three, they'll have to cut down on transport. Then what will happen? They will transport the leaf when it's half withered back to the estates, because they will have to save on the fuel. So, if you do all that, how can you produce a good quality tea? The bad quality tea will reflect in our blends, and that will reflect in the world market. And as a result, we will have less buyers buying our tea. Do you want to do that? It's an already struggling industry in the whole world. I mean, everybody's competing. When we started the nationalization, we created a giant in Kenya, because they took away all the good planters and started plantations in Kenya. So that really brought us another competitor, about 300 million kilos now. We were the biggest producer, we were the biggest auction, we were the biggest exporter. We are no more, because they overtook us because of our own folly, national policy folly. Who decided on nationalizing the plantations? That was the ruination of the industry at the very beginning. I was part of the industry then. I joined this industry in 69, and I saw this happening in 74. I've been in the trade for 55 long years. I've seen all the goods and the bads that has happened to this industry.
And you're still of an opinion that, whatever the wage structure that is existing right now, prior to the implementation of this 1,700 is fair.
No, we can give a little bit more, but there has to be negotiations, there has to be dialogue with the people who are involved in it and give a reasonable wage increase. That could have been done without haphazardly asking you to go 70% at once. No, nothing can last with a 70% increase. Who will buy your product?
But with your limited knowledge, of course, since you are part of the export
part,
part of the tea industry operation here in Sri Lanka, with what you know, has there been a proposal being forwarded by the Planters Association to the government saying, this is how we can increase wages, this is the best that we can do? Are you saying that there has been zero discussion between the government and the Planters?
They have had discussions before, but those things have not been implemented. This is what I am told. So they should really negotiate and come to a compromise.
But at the end of the day, now you cast aspersions on maybe the unions, on how some of the plantation sector employees work, then on certain lapses of the government. As a person who's been, like you said, for 55 long years in the tea sector, what do you think is the solution for this issue right now?
The only solution is to discuss, negotiate and come to an agreement where you give a reasonable wage. If it is low, it should be raised up to a reasonable level. Okay, let's say with the cost of living going up.
So according to your understanding now, 1,000 rupees is too low? Is that what you say? 1,000 rupees a day is too low?
That's what they say.
What do you think?
It's very difficult for me to understand because the 1,000 rupees could be enough in this way. They have free housing. They have many things free, which none of the others have. If you take the garment workers, they don't have any of these things free. They only get sometimes free transport. Here, they walk to their workplace. They walk back home in the afternoon to have lunch. They can have their own lunch at home. They are even given extra hours to cook and eat and come. Where do you get in the world such a facility where you live on the work premises? You virtually live on the work premises. Not virtually, you are living on the work premises. And in these labor quarters, not more than 17 or 18% are working, either 17 or 18% don't work in the estate. They work elsewhere, but they live in the quarters. You cannot send them out because they have been living there for years, 3-4 generations. So they are living free on estate account, but working elsewhere. If you have many of the domestics in Colombo are from estates. They have their free housing there. Their families are there. We know that.
But the fact that their living standards are so low for so long.
It is just that they keep it low. If they want to, but if you go to some new line room, not line rooms or cottages, they are very well made.
I haven't had the privilege of going there.
You have to really see them because you had quite a lot of cottages made now with a nice plot of land, and they have a plot for vegetables at the back. I have seen them. You should really go and see them. And all our officials must go and see them. Then they will not talk like this.
So, with the discussions on estate sector, salaries, especially discussions on salaries seem to crop up, especially close to an election. Do you think this is another, maybe kind of an election gimmick, trying to, strong arm the plantation, sector to maybe give these people this salary so that they can secure their votes at an election? Do you think?
I cannot pass judgment on that, but it looks like, looking at it now, the time is right. But still it could have been negotiated and a better wage given at a reasonable level so that both parties could last. If you do this, it impacts the plantations. Because it impacts the plantation industry, it will impact us, the exporters. It will impact the face of Ceylon tea, which is us. We are the exporters, and the people who export tea will suffer because our end user will see a poor quality tea.
So has there been any projections done on how much of an impact this could have on the Sri Lankan tea brand?
It should have a serious impact. We probably, if we continue like this until the situation gets normalized, we might have a 20 to 30% drop in exports.
20 to
Particularly for the brand owners. You know, few of us, there's about 40% of our tea going in value-added form. 60% goes in bulk. The bulk industry will also suffer because the quality will come down. Definitely, the packaged tea industry will suffer, and that means those who are able to pack outside, because already so many exporters from Sri Lanka have gone to Kenya and stationed themselves in Kenya because of all these restrictions. That is a bad thing, like the garment industry going out of Sri Lanka. We know that so many have gone out. That should not have happened to the tea industry. I personally do not want to, but there are people, large exporters, who have decided on doing that, or who have already started the foundation to do that. It's very bad. Bad for us.
So do you think the government is unaware of this? They just don't care?
Probably, yeah. I'm not sure whether they don't care, but they should really be made aware. It's a sad situation if it continues to happen.
So, well, the downfall of the tea sector in Sri Lanka, the loss of profitability, the drop in the exports of Sri Lanka's famed tea will undoubtedly, at the end of the day, affect the plantation sector employees. So, isn't that going to be counterproductive?
This is something that most unions don't realize. They don't realize that by putting force on the management, you are bringing down the stature of the company and the profitability of the company. And at the end of the day, they even expect bonuses. How can you pay bonuses when the company is running at a loss? That should not happen. And the industry going out is a very dangerous thing. That will definitely bring down, we are at least $1.3 billion now income to the country, to the national coffer. We expected it to be 1.5 billion without all these problems. We now never tried, we'll never be able to make it by the end of this year. But if we are to improve, all these things have to be resolved. And we should, because this is our bread and butter. But now when the garment industry goes out, garment volumes will come down. When the girls could go to work in the Middle East during COVID, that volume came down, in remittance. But the tea volume stayed because the plantation workers worked, we worked, exporters worked, we all worked and continued our export in spite of the problem. We even digitalized our tea auction from an outright system to a digitalized system overnight in 2 weeks. So that we could go without disruption. I don't know whether the officials recognize all that and salute us for doing it. It's a sad situation if they don't.
So, by appearances, it doesn't seem like the government is going to budge anytime soon, especially with the politicians representing the plantation sector and how they've very vociferously advocated for this wage increase and their involvement in the entire thing. It's very unlikely, if not impossible, to think that the government will take a step back and say, no, let's negotiate, let's come to some middle ground. Well, so where to next, if that is the most probable reality?
It is time they analyze this problem, looked at all the plantation industry issues and how it will eventually impact the exporter, and think wisely and take a proper decision.
But what I'm saying is that that's very unlikely to happen. If you are saying that they've misjudged the situation and all of this is true, or even if that is not true, and if they have actually judged the situation properly, we really don't know. This is your opinion. I'm not an expert in the field. Well, we're here to, of course, disclose facts to the general public. But despite all of that, despite the truth of what you're saying not been called to question, it's unlikely that the government is going to change this decision. Well, so my question to you is, what next?
Well, we will need to push in so much of knowledge and get these people to understand that this is absolutely necessary before we go down the bad road again. We have done it 3 times, I told you. Right? In my career in tea, in these 55 years, we have had 3 serious impacts. And we almost collapsed. Let us not make this the 4th collapsing incident. We should really negotiate with the government and come to some compromise and make it a reasonable rise. Because with the cost of living and all that, people probably need a little bit more money. But when there is already a scheme in place to work on the incentive scheme, why go that way? They should work on an incentive scheme and get more money. If they are wise and if they are not interfered in their decisions by others, outside factors, they should really do it.
But now looking at this from a different perspective at least, now it seems as if this whole system of giving incentives, giving free housing, free medication, free food, free plots of land, whatever said or done, all of those, do you think it really fits with the progressions in society, the modern day lifestyle of a person? Do you think that it's time that maybe the estate sector moves out of this? Because at the end of the day, like it or not, it's almost as if the estate sector employee is, a captive of the plantation sector for the simple reasons that they do not own the land that they live on. The moment that they are, fired from wherever they work, they lose their house.
No.
They don't?
They never lose. They don't. As I told you, there are many employees who don't work in the estate anymore. They are working elsewhere.
So
they are never allowed, ever chased out of the houses. The RPCs
even if there is an offence committed against the company and
you can sack them, but you can't take them out of the building.
You can't take them out of the building.
No.
But then what's the point if a person in today's day and age can't own a land, can't build a house?
Well, I told you in the new setup, they are given houses and land.
But when you say they are given, they are given land.
That's given to them. It's outside
freehold title.
Yes.
And how many of those lands, according to your limited knowledge, you don't know?
I don't know.
But do you think it's significant? Because I haven't seen it, so I don't think.
That is because you haven't done a good tour of these areas.
I wish I had the time.
With in detail.
Maybe you could arrange one.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. That's not a problem.
But really, Mr. Perera, now moving forward, like I said before, it's unlikely that the Sri Lankan government is going to shift. What do you think the next move of the plantation sector is?
If this goes
you still have hope?
We have hope because we have hope because we think that they are more intelligent than what we think, and they can definitely come to a compromise, because this cannot go on, because no industry.
I mean, hand on heart, you have hope that the government will move back from this salary increase at the heels of a very decisive presidential election, all factors considered. Do you really believe that the government is going to move back now?
Yeah, because this is not a huge number. If the 500,000
it's not a huge number.
No, it is not a huge number in the RPCs, because the 500,000 people are going to get affected.
When you say it's not a huge number, you mean the salary increase is not a huge amount?
No, salary increase is a big amount.
Yes.
But then if you take in terms of votes or whatever, this area is much smaller than the down south 500 million landowners who produce 70% of this country's production. 70%.
Oh, so you're saying that they will be negatively impacted and therefore they will have a negative impression of the government.
Yeah, because they will also have to give the same wage, because they are doing the same job. They are plucking. And most of them who have bigger plots don't work on the land. They hire workers and do it. There are some who have less than 1 acre who do their own labor work. If you have 30, 40 purchase, then they are their own workers, they are their owners, they are everything. But when it's a bigger setup, they need to hire workers. And sometimes some of those workers they hire are from plantations. So where if they are in close vicinity to the plantation sector. Because you have in the hill country also you have private plantation plots there. So they will definitely be impacted, and that is 70% of this country's production. This is a significant volume. Most of the Middle Eastern teas come from that lot. And some very good low growths are produced in that.
So as tea exporters, what can you do? Nothing.
We are trying to help the government, or rather help the plantation sector to try and negotiate and come to some agreement.
And how successful have you been?
Well, we are still trying. We have to be successful. If the industry has to sustain, we need to be successful.
It feels like you're on the side of the plantation management.
Of course, because
in
this setup, in this tea setup, we are all one. As I said, the CTTA is the apex body of the industry where the producers, the smallholders, the brokers and the exporters are all united, and because we cannot survive without the producer. We cannot survive without the broker to sell the tea in the auction. So we need this whole setup is very essential, and it has worked for 150 years smoothly. It should not go bad. Even with all the snags that we have had, the 3 major impacts that I told you, we still have lasted because of the unity of the whole setup. So it should never be compromised.
So let's say there is no hope for the government to move back on this. What would be next? What's the next move?
Well, then we all suffer, and then as a result of that move, the final product will suffer. That is our main concern as an exporter, because if the final product suffers and the tea quality comes down, our branded products will come down in stature, and it will be less in demand. We are meeting the entire world. When we export finished products from here, we are competing with internationally well established brands, and that's not easy. The brands that are exporting their own, people who are exporting their own brand from here, compete fiercely with the international brands. So we need the best way of doing it is upgrading your standard. Then the people will tea you take for taste. But of course, when it is when it's a market that's very poor, in a poverty market, then they'll look for price. Then of course there are the poor quality teas. But some of these we don't want. We need to be at the top. We need to sell our product as a quality product. Ceylon tea is famous for its quality, which says Ceylon for quality tea, and that's what our Lion logo represents. And we all ship under that brand. That's the Lion logo. We get our standards up at a higher level. But once you establish the brand, your consumer trusts your brand, and they don't look for anything but your brand. But we must keep our standard high. That's the long and short of it.
And then and that in your perspective is the biggest impact of this salary increase.
Could eventually be this.
But whenever I had discussions with representatives of the plantation sector, even what the government is saying is, flat out pay everyone 1,700 rupees a day. It's clear, at least. But when it comes to proposals from the management, it seems a little more ambiguous.
Yeah, because
at the very least
they cannot afford to give it with the current productivity. Then there should be no interference whatsoever in the management of the estate by the unions.
When you say interference, no interference
No,
whatsoever,
the
what do you mean?
The moment you put a person on charge for wrong behavior, right, the union should not come in, because the management is doing the right thing. Now, in our
How can you say that? I mean,
you know,
maybe the management is doing the wrong thing.
No,
Who knows?
management can never do wrong.
Management is immaculate.
no,
Management
no.
can never do wrong.
No, I have been in business for 40 years. We are never unreasonable with our
I'm
staff.
not saying that you
I'm
were
talking of the
unreasonable, but
management.
then anyone can be. I can be unreasonable.
You should be.
I
If
shouldn't
you
be,
are-
definitely, but
if-
I'm saying
if
I
you are-
can be.
If you are a management, if you are part of the
So
management.
are you saying that the plantation sector management is so immaculate
Yeah, because
that they can do no wrong? Is that
to
what you're
the
saying?
plantation sector,
You can vouch for every management
manager
in
normally, the
plantations.
manager of the estate is like God. They come to him for everything.
Okay.
In the old days, it was definitely positive.
Okay.
The manager looked after his staff like his own children. Every laborer.
You're saying there's not even a single bad apple.
There can always be a bad apple.
You said
Just
they
one
can do
one-
no wrong.
No, generally not. You think in the other state sectors there is no wrong thing happening?
No, I'm saying yes, there's wrong everywhere.
Yeah, no, but not always. So you have to be very careful. When you put it down there, you have to be extremely careful, because
No, but what I'm saying is when you say unions must stop interfering with the
interfering
management
in
of
the wrong things.
so
wrong things.
who is the arbiter of what is right and wrong?
The manager.
The manager is a party
He,
to
he
this.
knows.
I mean, that's against rules of
No.
natural justice.
General,
You cannot be the judge of your own case.
no, the managers are responsible for their higher management. And the higher management is responsible to the shareholder. So nobody down the line could do that amount of wrong and get away. They will be punished if they do something wrong. If the manager is very unreasonable,
Isn't that wishful thinking?
No, it is the right thing.
Isn't it wishful thinking is what
no.
I'm asking.
No. it has to be the norm.
But Mr. Perera, don't you really think that maybe the structure in how the tea sector operates here should undergo certain changes?
Well, the structure has been revised, discussed with the officials. Of
Because it always seems to be, this wage issue that always crops up. Wage issue that always crops up, and like you quite rightly said, the government and the unions want just a flat rate for everybody to be paid, and then you get the companies that say, no, we'll go on an incentive-based system, but then maybe in deciding what the incentive assessing the impact that these changes have caused to the tea sector in Sri Lanka, where are we at on that? How far can we assess? Is it too early? Is it mid, where we can have some assessment on how much this has impacted Sri Lanka's tea sector?
Well,
because the decision was quite recent.
Yeah, if the impact comes, the whole impact will be felt in the next 3 to 4 months.
3 to 4 months.
Yeah, it's a dangerous thing. And by then, of course, some of these companies.
Well, of course, I believe that there's going to be a presidential election. This is the month of June, July, August, September, October, November, in 5 months. You think that's too late to maybe revise this decision?
No, once you give this thing, there's no way of going back.
There's no way of going back.
No, definitely. Once you give it to the worker, they have not been paid then. Once you give it to the worker, there is absolutely no way of withdrawing it. No, you know, with labor salaries, if you allow them to get a new certain salary, next month you can reduce it. They'll be hue and cry. I mean, it's not fair. They get used to that higher level for 3 months, and suddenly they have to come down in their wages. That's not right. That cannot happen. So we need to dip it in the bud and sort it out and come to a level where it's affordable for both parties.
Well, of course, this seems to be putting many players in the tea sector between a rock and a hard place, because there is, of course, the issue of the living standard of the estate workers, their wages, and then, of course, the productivity, as you quite rightly mentioned, of the plantation sector and the export market prices. Many stakeholders, and this one issue seems to be causing a ripple effect across the entire sector. But at the end of the day, like you quite rightly pointed out, Mr. Anselm Perera, these unresolved issues will create chaos in the entire sector and affect the income of the country as a whole, the goodwill, the brand name of Ceylon tea as well. Of course, we do hope and pray that there could be some sort of an amicable settlement amongst all parties involved. We will continue to monitor the situation and, of course, keep you up to date on what's really happening. And what's more significant, of course, is also that there's a presidential election coming along, so you get those complications also coming into play. So as media, of course, we can give the people the truth and then wait and continue to do the same. Thank you very much, Mr. Anselm Perera, for joining us on our program this evening. Thank you very much to all our viewers out there for tuning in to another episode of Face to Face. Until we meet again, take care and God bless.